We've seen some good movies directed by actors, but what are some examples of the worst movies directed by actors? Pretty much nobody saw it, but Chris Pine's directorial debut, Poolman, was heavily panned last year. It was only in the festival circuit and never got a wide release. Looks like a distributor picked it up recently though, so the film likely will get a wide release soon. The movie was very well shot. There were some very cool scenes that you can tell there was some things that absolutely inspired him. The problem is stitching all those scenes together made no sense, and it was sort of supposed to be satirical, but it really fell flat. The film's initial reaction was largely negative. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film had an approval rating of 24% based on 23 reviews, with an average critic score of 3.6 out of 10. Metacritic assigned the film score of 20 out of 100 based on 9 critics, indicating generally unfavorable reviews. Chris Pine might be better off in front of the screen rather than behind. Steven Seagal directed On Deadly Ground, and it is a pretty embarrassing film, but I wouldn't exactly call him a well-regarded or talented actor. Michael Caine is the only good thing about that movie. Michael Caine said he broke one of his movie-making rules on this film. He said, if you're going to make a terrible movie, make sure it's filming in a nice location. The film received 6 Razzie Award nominations: Worst Actress, Worst Actor, Worst Picture, Worst Screenplay, Worst Original Song. Even the song is bad? Come on, how bad is it? Let's take a listen. And the movie won a Razzie in the Worst Director category. The film is listed in Razzie Awards founder John Wilson's book, The Official Razzie Movie Guide, as one of the top 100 most enjoyable bad movies ever made. On Deadly Ground received negative reviews from critics. On Rotten Tomatoes, it got a 14% approval rating from 35 critics' reviews, with an average rating of 3.5 out of 10. Metacritic gave the film a score of 33 out of 100 based on 18 critics. Fool's Paradise by Charlie Day is another example of a bad movie directed by an actor, which was a bit of a surprise, especially after how long he worked on that script and fine-tuned it. He said something, I think, on the Always Sunny podcast about how he asked a lot of people for advice while working on it, and some was good, some wasn't very helpful, but one dude told him he should junk it. He made it sound like that dude was a jerk. In hindsight though, it seems like that was the only person who was straight up honest with him. It's such a weirdly unfunny movie. It was like a comedy without any jokes, written by a guy who has written thousands of truly funny jokes. It was such a confusing watch. I would say Charlie Day is one of the top 10 of performers who made me laugh the most, yet Fool's Paradise was one of the most aggressively unfunny things I've seen in my life. On Rotten Tomatoes, 18% of 45 critics' reviews were positive, with an average rating of 4.3 out of 10. The website's consensus reads, Fool's Paradise suggests Charlie Day may have a bright future as a director, but he'll need to find smarter and more consistently funny scripts. Metacritic assigned the film a score 27 out of 100 based on 9 critics. Ewan McGregor directed American Pastoral, and I don't know why he chose that, of all things. It certainly isn't a book that makes you think, boy, this book would make a great movie. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 24% based on 123 reviews, with an average rating of 4.9 out of 10. The site's critical consensus reads, American Pastoral finds debuting director Ewan McGregor's reach exceeding its grasp, with a well-intentioned Philip Roth adaptation that retains the form, but little of the function of its source material. On Metacritic, the film has a score of 43 out of 100, based on 30 critics. Russell Crowe directed a movie called Poker Face, not to be confused with Poker Face, the excellent TV series directed by Rian Johnson, or the excellent Lady Gaga song that won a Grammy. It's a terrible movie starring Thor's brother. On Rotten Tomatoes, 9% of 34 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 4.2 out of 10. The website's consensus reads, as Kenny Rogers told us, you've got to know when to fold them. A warning Russell Crowe should have heeded when he got the script for Poker Face. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 43 out of 100 based on 10 critics. Harlem Knights is a 1989 American comedy drama film starring and directed by Eddie Murphy, who also wrote the movie. Harlem Knights was Eddie Murphy's only directorial effort. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds an approval rating of 26% based on 38 reviews, with an average score of 3.9 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, an all-star comedy lineup is wasted on a paper-thin plot and painfully clunky dialogue. On Metacritic, the film received a score of 16 based on 14 reviews. He was nominated at the Razzies for Worst Director that year and nominated for Worst Screenplay. The movie also was nominated for Worst Picture at the Stinkers Bad Movie Award. Star Trek V: The Final Frontier is a 1989 science fiction film directed by William Shatner, Captain Kirk. The Final Frontier received generally negative reviews from critics. Considered a critical and commercial failure, the poor performance of The Final Frontier jeopardized the production of further Star Trek features, and yet it has one of the best scenes in all of the Star Trek movies. The scene where McCoy relives the moment he helped his father pass away, mere weeks before a cure for his illness was discovered, and where Spock sees himself born and his father bitterly disappointed with his mixed race, and where Kirk flat out refuses to let his pain be on show. There were some really powerful, well-staged, great acting, and awesome directing in this film. The film is also wonky and has bad CGI, sometimes seems like a spoof, but it was always entertaining. At the 10th Razzie Awards, The Final Frontier was nominated for 6 Razzie Awards, including Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Actor, Worst Supporting Actor, Worst Screenplay, and Worst Picture, winning 3: Worst Picture, Worst Director, and Worst Actor. Monuments Men was directed by George Clooney, and I felt like that fell pretty flat. George Clooney is the king of directing fine, extremely forgettable films. His films always feel like they're chasing Oscar glory. It's like that's what's in his mind when he's making any decision while directing. The source book is very good, but the film was plotting and made it seem like all the big names in it were wasted. Maybe except Cate Blanchett. A lot of this was George Clooney's fault as the director, but the script needed some serious doctoring as well. The Monuments Men received a mixed to negative reviews from film critics. Rotten Tomatoes had the film as 30% approval rating based on 254 reviews, with an average score of 5.2 out of 10. The website's critical consensus reads, "Its intentions are noble, and its cast is impressive, but neither could compensate for the Monuments Men's stiffly nostalgic tone and curiously slack narrative." On Metacritic, the film had a score of 52 out of 100 based on reviews from 43 critics. The Charlie's Angels remake in 2019 is an American action comedy film written and directed by Elizabeth Banks. It was a remake that nobody wanted. It even won the sequel or remake that shouldn't have been made award from the Alliance of Women Film Journalists. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has an approval rating of 52% with an average score of 5.4 out of 10 based on 232 reviews. The website's critics' consensus reads, "Earnest and energetic, if a bit uneven." Elizabeth Banks' pulpy Charlie's Angels adds a new flair to the franchise with fun performances from its 3 leads. On Metacritic, the film has a weighted average score of 52 out of 100 based on 41 critics. In an interview with Variety, Kristen Stewart stated she hated making Charlie's Angels and prefers the 2000s remake. Elizabeth Banks' Charlie's Angels was ranked by both USA Today and Variety as one of the biggest box office disappointments of 2019. What did you guys think about these films? Are there any other films that actors directed that are bad? Let me know in the comments.